And welcome, you're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. On August 24th, Ukraine celebrates the Independence Day. This might be a good opportunity to take a look back and assess how has Ukraine changed during the 27 years of independence. To talk about the biggest Ukraine's achievements and failures in the economical dimension, we welcome in our studio today Veronika Movchan. She's a director at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting. So hello and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
When Ukraine gained its independence, which was 27 years ago, all of the experts, economic experts and political experts, were stating the point that Ukraine would be fast developing and would really soon become a very valuable, I would say, country member of the EU. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and since the year 1991, till 1996, we experienced hyperinflation, we experienced brain drain, we experienced lack of working force, and all of that happened in the country that was not hit by war like we are experiencing now. So why did Ukraine fail to achieve high results by the year 2000?
Actually, then it was forecasted that Ukraine would develop fast. Institutions were not taken into account. Yes, Ukraine was a part of the bigger system, the USSR, and its economy integrated in the USSR was quite developed, actually industrialized. Although the structure of this economy was not the economy linked to the world, it was the economy very strongly linked to the USSR, and actually has proven unable to survive successfully without a major transformation of the economy. Plus, the problem was that the Ukraine had never had the experience of nation building, the country, independent country management, basically the governance. Plus, we had a problem that we didn't have the private property. Everybody who had the experience of having private property before or had an entrepreneurship mood, they were actually killed or expelled from this country. 70 years of very dedicated cleaning of everybody who had some entrepreneurship skills, who wanted to be not a tiny part of the big system, but wanted to develop something independently. And this problem, this lack of institutions and actually the experience was severely underestimated. The people looked at the number of factories, they looked at the tons of some resources within the soil, but didn't take into account that it is not working without people. And only now we have quite a number of people who are ready to take their fate and to drive business, to be small businesses, large entrepreneurs, and to take responsibility for their own economic future.
Speaking of entrepreneurs, in the year 2001, oligarchs appeared. And what they did is they converted cheap energy and raw materials into manufactured goods. And the economy structure started changing. So did Ukrainian economy actually benefit from this change, or did the oligarch society actually impose a negative effect on our economy?
It's a bit too simplistic view, I would say. Actually, yes, we can probably observe the growing role of oligarchs by 2001. Then the economy started to grow, and actually on the wave of very strong external growth, high demand, for example, metals, the exports of metal products and draw out Ukrainian economy out of the crisis. But by that time, the Ukrainian economy actually, all sectors started to develop, and the economy started to change to respond to the internal market demands, because, for example, the service sector started to grow. If you remember, I don't know whether you remember, the quality of Soviet Union services, and whether they existed at all, not nominally called, but existed as a service. now, during that time, the services started to develop also. Now it's much better than it was before. Agriculture, only in 1999, the kolkhozes were finally dissolved and people got their land. And that boosted agriculture, although we have some deficiencies still there. But if you look currently, agriculture sector is increasing its productivity, and not by extensive exploration of more lands, but better seeds by new technologies, because it is only source now for developing of high harvest, and still we significantly improved yields, but there are still huge opportunity for further development. So actually in 2001, Ukrainian economy, after very deep crisis and actually a number of reforms over this 10 years, they were not shock reforms and in Poland, but gradual, but still they changed the system, plus positive external situation, together boosted the economy. But still we were not very solid. We didn't complete our reforms. The problem that Ukraine always doing something, achieves first results and then stops or relaxes. And then it's a very, very slow development. After, again, next crisis stimulates the economy further. That's why the current reforms, it's very important next year that these reforms continue, that we don't change something again, but finish what we started, because they already started to generate first gains, and if we continue started for several more years, we can think about sustainable
economic growth
or stable economic growth. Sustainable also includes ecology, but at least stable economic growth.
Gas trade with Russia has always been an inevitable part of Ukrainian economy. Now that we have abandoned this idea that we are supplying ourselves with gas, what changed for the Ukrainian economy?
First, what changed is actually the security issue, because it is not actually the economy, it's geopolicy that is here. But what also changed, that Ukrainian economy become less energy inefficient. Energy efficiency is growing, but it's not only gas, it's the whole complex of high prices for gas that created stimulus. And now we are launching, for example, energy efficiency fund to create further stimulus for energy saving. Plus, if you check now the alternative sources of energy, solar energy, wind energy, are developing quite actively in Ukraine. New stations are opening very frequently, maybe not every day, but every month for sure.
In spite of worsening demographics in Ukraine, we still managed to accumulate the biggest pension debt in Europe. And here are the numbers. Currently, we have 46 million inhabitants, and the pensions of 14 million pensioners grew from 9.2% of GDP in 2003 to almost 18% in 2009. This is one of the heaviest burdens globally. How did that happen?
Actually, first, I don't know where you took numbers. I checked. Currently, it's about 11 million pensioners. But it doesn't matter. The burden is indeed very high.
Yeah.
The problem here is not with pensioners and with level of pensions, which is actually quite low. The problem that we have a lot of shadow economy, which is not paying taxes. This is not contributing to the pension fund, and the burden on the people who are paying is much higher, and the burden on the economy reflected in terms of GDP is much higher than it should be. And it also creates this circle of distrust, that the people don't trust the state, that it provides bad services, they don't pay taxes, and government that cannot provide much better services if it's
so it's a closed circle.
It's a closed circle, and only if people change their mind, it's possible to change it. Or also there should be low taxation, quite low taxation. We actually almost achieved it, but it should be actually the prosecution for not paying taxes. In the United States, the tax authority is one of the most
the harshest ones.
Harshest ones in the country. So the problem is not the pensioners per se, the problem is the organization of the society. And also it's important to involve pensioners in the working force, to keep them, because there is a demography in Europe and in Ukraine that the people are getting older and older. Even I was surprised, I checked the expected age actually increased in Ukraine. It's currently slightly over than it was in 1991. So actually the people, even with our bad demographics, are living longer, and it's important to involve them in the labor force.
Yeah. The Revolution of Dignity in 2014 was a turning point in Ukrainian history, in Ukrainian politics, and of course in Ukrainian economy. What changed after the Revolution of Dignity?
If we talk about all reforms that change, and the country probably will need another talk.
Revolution?
Not revolution, actually, just another, at least hour or a day. But basically, all institutions are changing. We have, starting from the very core system of judicial reform, which is actually the core for the market economy, because it should ensure the property rights, including intellectual property rights. This is the core of any functioning democracy and market economy. To the very wide range of purely economic reforms, like in energy sector, which we only partly discussed, like deregulation, like much more efficient public spendings with public procurement reform, which is praised around the world. Actually, they just recently got another prize. Plus a signature of association agreement with the EU that embeds a lot of changes and actually anchors Ukraine to these changes, because they are now international commitment of Ukraine. Plus we have ongoing healthcare reform. We launched some educational reforms. Security, army, police. Actually, whatever you touch, they have changes. Somewhere we achieved a lot, like in public procurement. Somewhere we just started. Our way is always not, our path is not straight and quite curvy, like in customs reform. But basically the country has changed, and as I said already, it's important that the country continues and completes declared. Not after that, as happens after election, we have another strategies that completely overhaul all previous achievements. It's the continuity of changes, the continuity of commitments is very important to ensure the trust among local population and then foreign investors. Foreign investors cannot trust more than we are offering, and how we trust our own country. If we do not trust it, nobody would trust it. And but what actually made me feel better than I read that currently about 80% of people said that they're ready to take responsibility for their own lives. I don't think that somebody would help them. The government should help them.
And that number is higher than of what we had like 10 years before? What was the number 10 years before?
I haven't seen number 10 years before, but I think that the share, it means the vast majority of population. That's definitely higher. Yeah, it's definitely higher than before. But it also shows that this idea that somebody should do something for you is replaced by the idea I will do something for myself and for the country. And also the decentralization reform and the success of newly established agglomerated communities is also showing that people finally understood that it is their country, their responsibility, and they first have to do the first move. And this is I think, the recipe for success.
Well, let's hope that the number of people who wish to do something for themselves, for their lives, and for their country keeps growing and reaches 100% mark. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
That was Veronika Movchan. She's a director at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the rest.